Welcome to Take 5 an Inventory series, where we change the healthcare supply chain news of the day into something manageable for your busy schedule. I'm Alex Diamond, and this week I reached out to Z5 partner Steward Healthcare and asked its Senior Vice President of Supply Chain, Michael Procure, how the coronavirus crisis has changed his approach to PPE procurement.
What we've done is we've actually tried to centralize it completely. And so we're taking snapshots of inventory twice a week. And based upon those inventory positions, we're then making decisions about what kind of bulk inventory we need and where it should be located. And so the idea was to centralize the PPE buy decision so that we could aggregate and buy the largest quantity possible or needed, and then put it in a place where we could manage it and know exactly what facilities are requesting it. Now, what's interesting is, those facilities still receive some allocation of PPE from normal distribution channels. So really what we're trying to do is augment and fill in and then be ready for when the spikes occur. We're expecting more COVID in the fall, and when we start seeing those spikes, and we'll start moving inventory appropriately from those centralized locations. And I think there was reluctance initially because everyone was scrambling, and now you're asking for one more activity. But what we offloaded was all of that search that they all had to do. So, you had to identify what PPE vendors that you were going to procure from once you had discovered that your normal channels weren't going to be able to fulfill. And so now it becomes a question of, do you want all your hospitals, in this case 34 of them, looking at it individually, or would you rather try and do the assessment one time at the corporate side and then make those decisions? And so, clearly it's much more efficient if we can do it one time at corporate and then make those buy decisions. And then building the trust in the clinicians and in the supply chain folks at the facilities that when they need something, it's going to be there for them. So PPE is one more opportunity where we jumped in and demonstrated that we could actually deliver. In this case, not a single facility, not a single clinician ever was denied PPE when they needed it. Now, it got tight at times, and there was some angst about changing masks, from one style to another. But never did we ever get to a point where somebody didn't have something when they needed it, which was very important to us. We didn't want those images of garbage bags and others, we saw from some of the other sites around the country being, representative of what Steward and the supply chain were all about. So that was very important for us. Our activities in March, April, and May were, 80% of our time was spent on trying to identify a vendor who was credible enough to buy PPE items from it at some kind of a reasonable price. Even if it was 3 or 4x what you were paying before, if you could get a good quality product, you were willing to do that. The pressure on the supply chain in that perspective hasn't changed. Raw materials are in short supply, so the costs of what we call standard items, whether it's an isolation gown or an N95 mask or other things that have kind of come to light, still are very expensive in today's world, whether they're from our traditional sources or from our alternative ones that we identified for PPE. But once we had kind of identified that core set of vendors that we were going to use to augment our PPE stocks, then it became really kind of run rate business like everything else is. And so now we're kind of back to normal. We've got people going in and elective surgeries are being performed, and our supply chain is functioning much like it did previously. In the next 12 or 18 months, I think there's some really interesting things that we're going to continue to explore around that concept of centralized inventory management, and that's specifically because of some of the things that we did around PPE and the success we had there being centralized, as well as the north side inventory location where we brought all our excess inventory, and now we're managing that back out to the facilities.
That's all the time we have for this week. Join me and Michael Procure again next week when we talk about the future of supply chain management. Take 5 is a production of Z5 Inventory. To see all of our sources and resources for this episode and more, visit z5inventory.com. That's the letter Z, the number 5, and the word inventory.com.